Testing. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing. Oh, come on, man. All right, stand by. If we're live, stand by. How's everybody doing today? Not sure if we're live on YouTube. I'm trying to get this live on Crowdcast. Come on. And then we'll be broadcasting on Facebook Live also. Okay, so it looks like we're live on YouTube. How's everybody doing? We're going to get live here on Facebook in just a minute here. All right. Things are running slowly today. Okay, so we got this going on Crowdcast. Looks like it's like there's a glitch in the system because it was broadcasting live, but I wasn't getting an indication of it. Okay, so we're going to broadcast on Facebook Live on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. at 7:15 p.m. in 6 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and start since there are people here already. Okay, so we're on air recording here, and we're on Facebook Live. Okay, as well. We're on YouTube, I should say. And then we'll be on Facebook Live, our Facebook fan page, the African History Network shortly. All right, how's everybody doing? Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. And we're broadcasting today. It is Saturday, June 17th, 2017. And we are live today, trying to work through some technical difficulties. I see a lot of people watching the video that I did. The cop who killed Philando Castile found not guilty, and it's time for economic boycotts. I see a lot of people watching that video, so share that. Also share this broadcast here that we're doing live on your YouTube page, and when we broadcast on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, share it there also, the African History Network on Facebook. All right. Okay, so this broadcast here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an overview of an online class that I teach called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We're going to teach it, a session of it tonight, about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll go to about 9:30, maybe 10. Okay. And so we're going to do an overview of that. And then also I'm going to talk about a historical event this time of the year. Some sources say June 17th, some say June 25th, was the start of an economic boycott that a lot of people don't know about. Okay. It was the start of an economic boycott that a lot of people don't know about. Okay. And this was the beginning of the Tuskegee boycott. All right. The Tuskegee boycott. Now, a lot of people in Tuskegee, Alabama. Now, a lot of people are familiar with the Montgomery bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama. OK, and we know that lasted 381 days. OK, and it started December 5th, 1955, lasted December 20th, 1956. Well, the Tuskegee boycott lasted 4 years. Starts in 1957. The Tuskegee boycott lasts 4 years. And a lot of our people don't know anything about it. And with the recent events, and if you watch the video that I did dealing with Philando Castile and Officer Geronimo Yanis being found not guilty, okay, and being released. He was fired from the police department. That's a good thing, but I really think he should have been found not guilty. Okay, in that case. Well, when we look at this, you see African Americans using economic boycotts throughout our history, okay, to fight against white supremacy and racism. We see African Americans using economic boycotts throughout our history to fight against white supremacy and racism. All right, and on many different fronts. And if you saw the video that I did, it was about 2 hours and 5 minutes dealing with Philando Castile. You see that I talked about different economic withdrawal strategies that we can implement. Okay, well, this is a historical example of this, and a lot of people don't know about this. Also, I encourage you to read the article that I wrote, because I write articles also. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer. I have dozens of video clips on our YouTube channel. Here you're watching this on the MJ Rob 1914 YouTube channel. I'm in 6 documentaries right now. I'll be filming my 7th documentary coming up July, 3rd weekend in July. I'll be in Atlanta for the Black Homeschooling Conference. I'll be filming my portion of Black Friday Part 2, What Legacy Will You Leave, from director Rick Mathis. I'm in the Elementary Genocide Part 3 documentary that's about to come out from director Raheem Shabazz. I'm in there with Professor Kabahayawatha Kamene, Professor James Small. And also I'm in the documentary Resurrecting Black Wall Street, The Blueprint, from Dr. Boyce Watkins, Your Black World Films, and director Dorian Chandler. Those are just a few of the documentaries I'm in. Hey, check out the article that I wrote. I wrote this December 15th, 2015. Why did Dr. King tell us to redistribute the pain, understanding the power of economic withdrawal? Why did Dr. King tell us to redistribute the pain, understanding the power of economic withdrawal? Okay. And you can read all of my articles at my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Go there, read all of my articles, all of my DVD presentations, DVD lectures, things like that are available there as well. Okay. You can register for our online course there also. Okay. So the Tuskegee boycott of it starts in June 1957, right? So African Americans began to boycott city stores in Tuskegee, Alabama, as a way to protest against the law that prohibited African Americans prohibit them of municipal votes by strategically placing their homes just outside of city limits. Okay, so this is an example of gerrymandering, and this is an example of the tricks that Europeans implemented to try to keep us from being able to vote. All right. And if you heard the show that I did this past Thursday on the morning show here in Detroit, 9:10 a.m., the Superstation, Wake Up with Steve Hood. I do radio here in Detroit. I'm on the morning show every Thursday morning, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm on Wake Up with Steve Hood. That's the morning show here in Detroit. And we talked about this, okay? And we talked about how in 1962, Medgar Evers led an economic boycott in Jackson, Mississippi. Okay, Jackson, Mississippi. And I talked about Medgar Evers because June 12th was the anniversary of the murder of Medgar Evers, okay, by Byron Della Beckwith. Okay, a white supremacist, Byron Della Beckwith. All right. So, and one of the things they were fighting for in Jackson, Mississippi, and in the state of Mississippi, was for African Americans to actually gain the right to vote and not have to recite the 200, not have to be able to be knowledgeable of the 286 sections of the Mississippi state constitution, different things like this, right? Because this was one of the things that they had to be knowledgeable of, be ready to recite for the white registrars when they went to try to go and vote. Okay, if you watch Eyes on the Prize, section installment number 5, Eyes on the Prize, installment number 5, when they deal with it's about 1962 to 1964, something like this. Okay, there were 286 sections to the Mississippi state constitution or code or something like this, and the white registrars that you had to go to get the registration form from to be able to vote, fill it out, etc. They would pick one of these sections and you'd have to explain it to their satisfaction, even though many of these white men, they were mainly men, even though many of these white men that you had to explain it to were illiterate, but they could vote. Okay, so these are some of the games that they were playing with us back at those times, and they're playing these games again. You study Republicans, and I've talked about this before. Unfortunately, a lot of our people are not knowledgeable of what Republicans are doing right now to suppress the vote, and this is strictly coming from Republicans trying to suppress our vote. This past 2016 election cycle, there were 13 new states that had new voter ID laws. This is all pushed by Republicans. Okay, I'm neither Democrat nor Republican, but I see the people who are passing legislation that does us harm, and they're almost exclusively Republicans. If you actually study, I'm not going by perception. Okay, I'm dealing with facts and evidence. Okay, so when we look at this economic boycott here from 1957, all right, so You have African Americans fighting against gerrymandering. All right. Their homes were being strategically placed outside of the city limits, okay, to nullify their vote. Now, the African Americans had a majority. They made up the majority of Tuskegee, Alabama, the population. Now, whites mostly owned the businesses and held the municipal offices, okay? In Tuskegee, Alabama, African Americans began a voter registration drive with the Tuskegee Institute, which is now Tuskegee University. We know about Tuskegee University and Booker T. Washington, and also sometimes people forget that Dr. George Washington Carver was at Tuskegee as well. All right, so you have African Americans. They begin a voter registration drive with Tuskegee Institute, which is now Tuskegee University. And this obtained some success, this voter registration drive. Yet the Alabama state legislature redrew the Tuskegee town boundaries, Tuskegee, Alabama. They withdrew the Tuskegee town boundaries that excluded Tuskegee Institute. Now, in response to this, African Americans fought back against white supremacy with economic withdrawal strategies, with economic boycotts. They focused on redistributing the pain. And April 3rd, 1968, in his last speech, "I've been to the mountaintop," Dr. King said that we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. He said we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. And this is what I explain to Black Lives Matter activists and other activists, because I've interviewed them on my radio shows. I've done national radio for 2 or 3 years. Used to guest host for Roland Martin on his national radio show dozens of times. On my show, the Michael Imhotep show, I used to do on the Empowerment Radio Network. Then also I do the African History Network show here out of Detroit on 910 AM, the Superstation, WFDF. And one of the things I tell the activists is that you have to engage in targeted, sustained economic withdrawal strategies, okay? And targeting white-owned banks is a very, very good start, because we have alternatives to white-owned banks. We have African-American-owned banks and African-American-owned credit unions. So Dr. King said that we have to always anchor our external action with the power of economic withdrawal. And this is what they did in 1957. So African-Americans would end up making an 80-mile round trips to Montgomery to buy food, clothes, and other necessities. Okay, they end up making 80-mile round trips to go to Montgomery, Alabama. Okay, to buy food, clothes, and other necessities, because they were boycotting the white stores in Tuskegee, Alabama. Now, this economic boycott effectively created devastating economic consequences for Europeans who preferred to go out of business rather than allow African Americans the right to vote. They would rather go out of business to allow African Americans the right to vote. And when you study this period of time in Mississippi, you study this period of time in Alabama, you find out about the white citizens councils. The white citizens councils and the white citizens councils were very, very powerful. Okay, the white citizens councils were very, very powerful. And the white citizens councils worked hard to suppress the African American vote and to keep us from voting. Okay. And if you study who killed Medgar Evers, June 12, 1963, it was Byron Della Beckwith. And Byron Della Beckwith was a member of the White Citizens Council. He was a member of the White Citizens Council. And the White Citizens Council, you know, they're going to be made up of bankers, landowners, plantation owners, things like this. And in Mississippi, for instance, if you go study Fannie Lou Hamer, who comes out of Mississippi, Fannie Lou Hamer was fired from the plantation that she and her family worked on. She was the youngest of about 19 children. Fannie Lou Hamer, imagine that. Oh my God. She was the youngest of about 19 children. And they were sharecroppers. They all worked on the plantation. Okay. Well, she was fired from the plantation that they worked on not because she voted, but because she registered to vote. And what happened was, to keep African Americans from registering to vote, what they would do is if you had a loan outstanding with the bank or something like that, they would call that loan in. If you registered to vote, you could get fired from your job. You can get fired off of the plantation that you worked on. You could be beaten up, possibly killed, all different types of things like this. Okay. So we have to understand, a lot of people, even today, a lot of African Americans still don't understand the power of the African American vote. Now, white Republicans do. This is why they feared the power of the African American vote. And this is why they worked so hard to suppress our vote in this past election. If you study the cross-checking system, Google cross-checking and Chris Kobach, I think it's Kobach, Google cross-checking and Chris Kobach, because the cross-checking system was used to wipe 1.1 million people off the voter rolls, most of them people of color. It was used to wipe 1.1 million people off the voter rolls, most of them people of color. And what they did was they targeted people who they thought had ethnic sounding names, number one. Number two, people who they thought were predisposed to vote Democratic. And the cross-checking system was used in about 28 states across the country. And what they said was that they said that there were 3.5 million people who were voting illegally and registered in 2 states. So they said that James Brown in Detroit was the same James Brown in Cleveland, Ohio, and they will wipe them off the voter registration rolls. So when they show up to register to vote, I mean, not to register to vote, to actually vote, their name's not in the system, anything like that. They wipe out the voter rolls. And this is designed to discourage people from voting. This is what happened in 2016 election. A lot of our people don't understand what just happened. Okay. If your vote didn't matter, Ohio would not have taken the case to the U.S. Supreme Court, which is not cheap, to go through the appellate courts and go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court to wipe African Americans off the voter rolls. Okay. And if you check out the article from AtlantaBlackStar.com, and this article is called How to Get Rid of 7 Million African American Latino Votes Without Anyone Noticing. Because so many of our people are sidetracked watching Love and Hip Hop, Real Housewives of Atlanta, watching things like this, trying to keep up with the Kardashians, and following the latest. People are caught while this stuff is taking place right in front of our faces. And many of our people don't understand that this is taking place. Okay. So this is real. This is not conspiracy. This is real. This is documented. You can go research this. This is documented. All right. So I'm not sure why we're not broadcasting on Facebook Live. This is giving me a problem. All right, but anyway, we'll continue here. Okay, so the boycott ended in 1961 after 4 years. Okay, now these African Americans had an economic boycott. They were fighting back against white supremacy because they understood the power of their vote. And Europeans understood the power of their vote because that's why they were trying to keep them from voting. Today, Republicans understand the power of our vote. This is why they're going to court to suppress our vote. We don't understand the power of our vote, and we just sit back and let them beat the hell out of us. Don't even know what the hell's going on. Don't even, all this stuff is taking place right around us. Don't even understand what's going on. So the boycott ends in 1961 after 4 years. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in the case Gomillion versus Lightfoot, Gomillion, Gomillion versus Lightfoot. They ruled that gerrymandering district constitutional and the old town boundaries were restored. Okay, this is a landmark case, Gomillion versus Lightfoot, and I was reading some different articles about this case today and yesterday as well. Gomillion, this goes to the U.S. Supreme Court. Gomillion versus Lightfoot. They ruled that gerrymandering districts to restrict African Americans from voting is unconstitutional, and the old town boundaries were restored. Okay, so this is a little known victory in civil rights history. This is something that's not talked about. There were a lot of economic boycotts that took place that we need to study. We need to understand the anatomy of a boycott. Okay, I'm going to deal with this a little bit more. I may have time to talk about this on Sunday on my show. I'm on 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, the Voice of Detroit, the African History Network show. And if you go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, we have information there how to listen to the show. Right. I just want to give you some more information about this case, because this is something that we really need to study, especially in light of what happened in the case of Philando Castile and Officer Geronimo Yanis being found not guilty. Okay. Now, I saw on AM Joy, everybody watch AM Joy with Joanne Reed Saturdays and Sundays, 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Okay. Okay, and we have the live chat here. Sorry. Okay, this is I think this may be my second or third time broadcasting on YouTube Live. Okay, so we have All Eyes on Media watching. We have Eli Jocks, Boards in the Hood, said Black Power. Eli said hi. Felicia McCrae, good evening. All Eyes said you can be heard. Okay, so how you all doing there? Now I know where the chat is. Usually I broadcast on Facebook Live. I wanted to do it here on YouTube because I'm trying to use YouTube more. But I see the chat here, so that's good. Okay. All right. So how's everybody doing? And we'll post our website here. And actually here, we'll post a link here. You can register for the online class I'm going to teach this evening, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We just posted a link, and here's our website also, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right. Okay, so all right. So let's continue here. Okay, so in 1957, in the effort to frustrate increasing Black voter registration and the threat of losing white voter majority, Alabama State Senator Sam Inglehart sponsored Act number 140, which proposed to transform the Tuskegee city boundaries from a square into a 28-sided shape resembling a seahorse. To transform the boundaries of the city of Tuskegee from a square into a 28-sided shape resembling a seahorse. That included every single one of the 60 white voters and excluded all but 5 of the 40 African-American voters. Okay. This included every single one of the 600 white voters. Okay. In this district that they're trying to redo, and excluded all except 5 of the 400 African-American voters. Now in Tuskegee, Alabama, back at this time, African-Americans were the majority population. Okay. And this is what the minority population was doing to maintain control, maintain power. So Alabama State Senator Sam Inglehart, who was a plantation owner and an executive secretary of the Alabama Association of the White Citizens Council. You got to study the White Citizens Council because a lot of people focus on the Ku Klux Klan, but the White Citizens Council had political power and they were terrorizing us also. And they had White Citizens Councils in different states in the South. So State Senator Sam Inglehart explained, quote, "The folks up there feel like I do. Civil rights legislation is going to pass the United States Senate either this year or the next, and we're going to be prepared for it. We couldn't stand seeing a Negro in the Alabama state legislature." Okay, so this is in 1957. Now, for years, Alabama had quite successfully discouraged and thwarted African-American voter registration. But with new civil rights legislation threatening to make disenfranchisement more difficult, the Alabama state legislature decided to deliver a preemptory assault on Black self-determination. So despite appeals to prominent African-American community members to the city council there in Tuskegee, Alabama, and to the county commission, the Alabama legislature's committee on local legislation as well, they made appeals to them, and even a direct appeal to the voters in an open letter in the Montgomery Advertiser. Okay, the Montgomery Advertiser, I think is a newspaper there. This was on June. Unanimously approved the bill, which was Act number 140. Act number 140. And on June 21st, 1957, the State House of Representatives in the state of Alabama followed suit with a vote of 80-0 to enact Act number 140, which would redraw the district lines to nullify the African-American vote and suppress the African-American vote in Tuskegee, Alabama. Okay. And once again, in redrawing these district lines, what they were doing, this included every single of the 600 white voters in this new district and excluded all except 5 of the 400 African-American voters who were registered to vote. They're trying to just totally nullify the vote. Okay. And to also prevent more African-Americans from registering to vote. Now, in a city where the African-American population was more than quadruple the white population, okay? So you have 5,397 African-Americans who lived in the city of Tuskegee, Alabama at this time in 1957, compared to 1,310 white people. But the white people work and have political power, and they're using laws to suppress the majority of African Americans and to keep them from voting and nullify the political power that they had. Now, Frank Olin, O-A-L-I-N, who was a local paint store manager and city council member, insisted, he said, quote, "It's a matter of self-preservation. It's a matter of self-preservation. Negroes were about to outvote us and take over control of the city." See, they're fighting for white supremacy and racism by any means necessary. They understand the power in having political power. They understand the power of the vote. That's why they wanted to keep African Americans from voting in 1957. That's why they tried to keep African Americans from voting in 2016. That's why they try to keep African Americans from voting in 2018. And after the Shelby County versus Holder decision, which was a Supreme Court decision in 2013, which struck down Section 5 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, that people think most of our people don't even understand the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and they think, oh, it was inconsequential. Really? Why did the U.S. Supreme Court strike it down? Why did you have 13 new states that then had new voter ID laws right after that was struck down? And this past election cycle that took place was the first presidential election where the full power of the 1965 Voting Rights Act did not exist because it was weakened. We don't even understand what just happened. We're going backwards, and these draconian laws that Republicans are passing are setting us backwards, and we don't even understand what the hell's going on. We're focusing on getting high and trying to metaphysically transport ourselves back to 3000 BC in ancient Kemet. Don't even understand they're whipping our asses politically. And we think politics doesn't matter. No, it does matter. This is why they're spending so much money to suppress our vote. If it didn't matter, explain to me why U.S. Senate Republicans right now, about 16 of them, are behind closed doors crafting the Senate version of Trump's Health Care Act. And they're about to give a massive multi-billion-dollar tax cut to the top 1/10 of 1% and kick 23 million people off of health care. The Walmart family is going to get about a $52 billion tax cut, probably over about the next 10 years. It'll average out to that. Okay. And this is from healthcare, which makes up either 1/5 or 1/6 of the U.S. economy. All the social ills almost all of the social ills that we deal with are the negative side effects of bad policy. Almost all of the social ills that we deal with are the negative side effects of bad policy. But we don't understand statutes, ordinances, amendments, treaties, the adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. The writing of law, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Number one. Number two, other way to understand politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. The legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. The legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. Now, everybody understands this except us. Okay. On YouTube, All Eyes on Media said getting high and metaphysically transporting back to 3000 BC, LOL. Absolutely. That's what a lot of people are doing. See, your history and culture is supposed to help you to meet the needs and solve the problems of your community today and plan for the future. Your history and culture is supposed to help you meet the needs and solve the problems of your community today and help plan for the future. That's what your history and culture is supposed to help you do. The history and culture is not designed to allow for escapism, because many of our people are doing the same thing that we accuse many Christians of doing. Now, what I say may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Just because you never heard it before or disagree with it does not mean it's not true. It just means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so a lot of times we have a lot of our Christian brothers and sisters who are so heavenly bound and no earthly good, and they're so focused on going to heaven, they're not focused on dealing with the problems of today. Okay, well, you have some people in the so-called conscious community that are doing the same thing. You know, you have, instead of wearing a cross, they're wearing an ankh. Instead of saying hallelujah, they say hotep. But the history and culture is supposed to help you to meet the needs and solve the problems of the community today and plan for the future, not to use it as escapism so you don't have to deal with the problems of today and plan for the future. Okay, so you have Frank Olin, who's a local paint store manager, and he was a city council member there in Tuskegee, Alabama. He's white. And he said, quote, "It's a matter of self-preservation. It's a matter of self-preservation. Negroes were about to outvote us and take over control of the city. They understood what happened if they let African Americans, who made up the majority population in the city, they understood what happened if they let them actually vote." Now, Senator Engelhardt, State Senator Sam Engelhardt, okay, who was also a member of the White Citizens Council, okay, State Senator Sam Engelhardt proudly boasted, he said, "I gerrymandered those niggers right out of town. If that Civil Rights Commission comes down here and forces mass registration of unqualified Negroes, there will be bloodshed. If that," quote, "if that Civil Rights Commission comes down here and forces mass registration on unqualified Negroes, there will be bloodshed." Why? He said, why? We'd have niggers in office. Can you imagine being arrested by a nigger sheriff? This is the climate that was existing in 1957, Tuskegee, Alabama, that our ancestors were fighting against. He said, listen to what this fool said. Now, keep in mind, a lot of white people who could vote were illiterate. Talk about unqualified people voting. A lot of the white people who could vote were illiterate. Snuff dippers, moonshine drinkers, you know, eating mayonnaise sandwiches. He said, if that Civil Rights Commission comes down here and forces mass registration of unqualified Negroes, there will be bloodshed. See, they understood the power of voting. They were willing to fight and kill for it. He said, why? He said, we would have niggers in office. He said, can you imagine being arrested by a nigger sheriff? Now, in fact, quote unquote, now, in fact, though, the educational level of Macon County African Americans exceeded whites because of the influence of Tuskegee Institute, and the Chicago Daily Tribune went as far as saying that, quote, any educational test for voting, no matter how rigorous, is fairly applied, would probably result in the enfranchising of more Negroes than whites in Macon County. This is Macon County, Alabama, I should say. Macon County, Alabama. The African Americans had a higher educational level than most of the white people there in that county because of Tuskegee Institute. Okay. And once again, the person you getting the voter registration form from, okay, and have to go through whatever literacy tests and things like this, a lot of those white people were illiterate, couldn't read. Once again, any educational test for voting, no matter how rigorous, if fairly applied, would probably result in the enfranchising of more Negroes than whites in Macon County. Now, according to Charles G. Gamolian, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his last name. It's spelled Gomillion, Gamolian. He was a dean at the Tuskegee Institute and president of the Tuskegee Civic Association. And we know Tuskegee Institute becomes Tuskegee University, right? This is what Booker T. Washington was. But now Booker T. Washington is passed away at this time. He dies in 1915. Now, this was the straw, he said, quote, this was the, quote, straw that broke the camel's back. Straw that broke the camel's back, quote unquote. Already frustrated by the Macon Board of Registrars' failure to register African-American voters, Charles G. Gamolian and several other African-American leaders decided to initiate a merchant boycott. They were redistributing the pain through economic withdrawal strategies. Okay. Just 4 days after the House vote. Okay. So this is the House vote. The House vote took place on June 21st, 1957. This instituted Act number 140. Okay. And it was Act number 140 of the state legislature that gerrymandered the redistricting of the city of Tuskegee, Alabama, to be in favor of the minority white voters. Okay. So just 4 days after the House vote, 3,000 African Americans gathered at Butler Chapel AME Zion Church. Okay, that's a long name. You know, a lot of African American churches that have long names. Okay, 3,000 African Americans gathered at Butler Chapel AME Zion Church to join the Crusade for Citizenship. And they went to listen to Charles G. Gamolian urge a, quote, trade with friends, boycott of local white merchants. He vowed, quote, we are going to buy goods and services from those who help us, from those who make no effort to hinder us, from those who recognize us as first-class citizens, and not with those who would seek to devour us. Okay. Now, when you look at Medgar Evers and the economic boycott Medgar Evers had in Jackson, Mississippi in 1962, that fight, at the same time he's working to register African Americans to get registered to vote. Right. He was the first field secretary for the NAACP in the South. He was the field secretary in Mississippi. Now, this is very dangerous work. I mean, people can talk about the NAACP they want to, but you got to understand, in the South, if you were a member of the NAACP, you were targeted by white supremacists. Okay, you could be killed for just being a member of the NAACP, let alone trying to get other African Americans to register to vote. You understand how dangerous that was in Mississippi? See, a lot of our people talk about today what they would have done back then. They ain't even doing that stuff today, what they would have said that they done back then. They don't understand how dangerous the work was of a civil rights activist in Mississippi in 1950s, 1960s. So Charles G. Gamolian, dealing with this economic boycott, he said that, quote, we are going to buy goods and services from those who help us, from those who make no effort to hinder us, from those who recognize us as first-class citizens, and not with those who would seek to devour us. And when you study with Medgar Evers and the economic boycott they had as well against the white merchants in Jackson, Mississippi, they were fighting for their rights to be first-class citizens. Now, they did not think that if they could vote, that meant they were free. That's a misnomer. They did not think if they could vote, that meant they were free. But they understood that voting was something that free people did. They understood that voting was something that free people did. You have to understand, Medgar Evers was somebody that fought in World War II. He was somebody that fought in World War II. He was denied entry to the University of Mississippi to go to law school, okay, because of segregation. This was after the Supreme Court decision of Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, and he's going to help James Meredith integrate University of Mississippi in 1962, I think it was, okay, in 1962. Okay, so all right. I think it was 62 with James Meredith. Okay, so let me flip back here to YouTube. I'm monitoring a couple of different pages here. Okay, so just bear with me here. I'm one person, and we're not broadcasting on Facebook Live, so I'm going to have to rebroadcast this on Facebook Live. So how's everybody doing? Everybody watching? How's everybody doing? You learning anything? You enjoying this information? Be sure to register for our online course, also Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And we're going to teach a session of that either tonight or tomorrow night, depending upon the time. But you'll be able to watch the class I did last Friday. As soon as you register, you'll be able to watch that. We'll have some bonus content there also. So it's a 12-hour, 6-week online course. We teach normally on Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Because of the Philando Castile verdict in the case yesterday, I did a 2-hour and 5-minute broadcast. My mind wasn't, I wasn't mentally in the frame of mind to teach a class because I was pissed off. So I did that broadcast yesterday, and I'm trying to do, if we don't do the class tonight, we'll do it tomorrow. Ran into some technical difficulties here, but we're going to continue here. Okay. So how's everybody doing watching us right now? All right. Okay. So the next week, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. came to show his support for the boycott. This is in 1957. This is right around June or the 1st of July, 1957. To show his support for the boycott by speaking to 2,000 African Americans at the Washington Chapel AME Zion Church. And he said, quote, "You are not seeking to put the stores out of business, but to put justice into business. You're not seeking to put the stores out of business, but to put justice into business." Okay. Now, if they go out of business in the meantime, well, then, you know, it is what it is. All right. But their goal was to put justice into business. Okay. So Charles G. Gamolian said, quote, "If white citizens here feel Negroes should not vote, then Negro citizens feel their money should not be spent with these folks. We prefer to spend our money with people who might help us, or who at least are in a poor position to hurt us directly. White people in Montgomery, for instance, okay, Similarly, Dr. E.H. Foster, who was president of the Tuskegee Institute at the time, he said, quote, now that they don't want us in the city of Tuskegee, I have no reason to trade there. Now that they don't want us in the city of Tuskegee, I have no reason to trade there. So what they did was they weaponized their dollars. They weaponized their dollars, and they redistributed the pain to those inflicting pain upon them through economic withdrawal strategies. And they redirected dollars to those who were more allies or doing less harm to them, redirected dollars also to some African-American owned businesses as well. Okay. And if you look at the Black Bank movement, well, the Black Bank movement goes back to February 2016, at least January, February 2016. But if you look at July, it was about right around July 7th of 2016. That's when hip hop artist Killer Mike was on Miss Shanika's show in Atlanta. And this was right after the killing of Alton Sterling Philando Castile in that same week. I think it was July 7th was the date, because Philando Castile was shot and killed on July 6, 2016. And Killer Mike called for African Americans to open up bank accounts at Citizens Trust Bank in Atlanta. Citizens Trust Bank in Atlanta. And you had a surge in the Black Bank movement all across the country behind this. And you had banks in Chicago, Detroit, Atlanta, different cities across the country seeing a surge in African Americans coming in, opening up bank accounts. And this is something Dr. King talked about in his last speech. He said, take your money out of the banks downtown and put your money in Tri-State Bank. Now, Tri-State Bank was an African American owned bank in Memphis, Tennessee at the time. He said, take your money out of the banks downtown and put your money in Tri-State Bank. Okay. All right. So now within weeks, the boycott and put the gerrymandering case in the national spotlight. And Dr. King was correct when he said we have to always anchor our external direct action, like mass protests, marches, always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. Okay. He's absolutely correct. Now, so the next week, so within weeks, the boycott had plunged local sales by more than 75% and put the gerrymandering case in the national spotlight. Okay. Consequently, Alabama officials began an effort to suppress the boycott. By the end of July of 1957, the state attorney general and future governor John Patterson led multiple raids against the offices of the Tuskegee Civic Association in an effort to discourage the boycott. Okay. Once again, this is also an attempt to suppress the African American vote. So if you look at what happened in the state of Indiana under Governor Mike Pence during the 2016 election cycle, you saw that the attorney general at the time, sent the state police into a voter registration office that registered African Americans to vote. The majority of the people they registered to vote were African Americans, and they were looking for 10,000 voter registration ballots that may be fraudulent. They confiscated 50,000 voter registration ballots. They were looking for 10,000 that may have been fraudulent. They confiscated 50,000. I still haven't been able to find out what happened to those 50,000 voter registration ballots. This happened during the 2016 election cycle. This happened last year under Governor Mike Pence, governor of Indiana, who is now vice president. Now, if your vote didn't matter, why'd they do this? Somebody please explain this to me. If your vote didn't matter, why'd they do this? Okay. And Dr. Benjamin Chavis was interviewed on News One Now with Roland Martin to talk about it. we're going to post this link here, right here. We'll post a link right there. Those watching on YouTube, you check that link out, and those watching on Crowdcast, we'll post it here also. Check out the article. Check out the article from newsone.com. It's called, hold on just a second. Okay. Article from newsone.com is called Indiana Officials Target Black Voter Registration Drive for Voter Fraud. Indiana officials target Black voter registration drive for voter fraud. This happened. Now, how many of y'all watching? How many of y'all heard about this? Okay. This happened in 2016, just 2 or 3 months before the election. Dr. Benjamin Chavis, president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, said this is not voter fraud, this is voter suppression, led by state officials, and Governor Mike Pence ought to be ashamed of himself. Mike Pence is now your vice president. This didn't happen 50 years ago. This happened last year. Indiana's Republican Secretary of State, Connie Lawson, launched an investigation into the Indiana Voter Registration Project, a nonprofit organization that aims to register African-American voters. Secretary of State Connie Lawson wrote a letter to state election officials last month warning that, quote unquote, nefarious actors were engaged in potential voter fraud. An investigation conducted by the state police found incorrect birth dates and first names on the state's voter rolls, but could not determine why or how the changes were made. Democrats have cried foul and say the state actions prevented the group from registering 10,000 voters before the voter registration deadline. Dr. Benjamin Chavis was on News One Now with Roland Martin and called Indiana Republicans' actions to bar 10,000 voters from being registered, quote unquote, voter suppression. He said, we got to call Mike Pence's name. It was the Indiana State Police that put a raid on the largest voter registration apparatus in the state of Indiana. It was Governor Mike Pence that put a raid, R-A-I-D, on the largest voter registration apparatus in the state of Indiana. Dr. Benjamin Chavis went on to say, quote, they shut it down and they confiscated the records, end quote. They shut it down and they confiscated the records. According to the civil rights activists, as a result of the police raid, quote, all of the people that the voter registration group have registered are now in jeopardy. And quote unquote, and when these thousands of Black voters go to vote on election day, they could be questioned. Okay. I don't know. I still haven't been able to find out what happened to those they registered to vote. Okay. Because I saw one report that talked about 50,000 that were actually registered to vote. Okay. Confiscated. Because there was I saw some other articles about this same story as well, but you could check out that article. There was one article from salon.com. I don't know if that you can just Google that topic, but there was you can just research voter suppression in Indiana. AtlantaBlackStar.com has this article, police raid Indiana's largest voter registration drive may block 45,000 Black citizens from voting. This is October 26, 2016. This is less than a month before the election. These are the type of games these people are playing. While people staying at home thinking their vote doesn't matter, their vote is being nullified. Check out that article from AtlantaBlackStar.com. Okay, now I should post here on YouTube. Let me post this here on YouTube. I know it's a long link. Pence may be our president sooner than later. Okay, it's not letting me post that link for some reason. Let me see if I can just post the name of this article here. I want to make sure you get this, because a lot of our people operating based upon a bunch of nonsense and conspiracy theories, while all this stuff is just staring us right in the face and slapping the hell out of us. And we're just totally confused. Okay. I think Pence may go down also. Pence wants to play like he didn't know what was going on. No, he knew what was going on. Okay, so let's continue here. Okay, Felicia says she heard about it. Most of our people didn't hear about this. Okay, so just as they had a raid in Indiana to suppress the African-American vote, you have this going on from future Governor John Patterson in 1957 in Tuskegee, Alabama. By the end of July 1957, State Attorney General and future governor of Alabama, John Patterson, led multiple raids against offices of the Tuskegee Civic Association in an effort to discourage the boycott. On July 29th, John Patterson warned blacks against violating Alabama's anti-boycott law. Again, he warned blacks about violating Alabama's anti-boycott law. By August 16th, 1957, Patterson succeeded in obtaining an injunction against Charles G. Gomillion and the Tuskegee Civic Association after having secured an injunction banning the NAACP from operating in Alabama the previous year. Now, if the NAACP wasn't effective, why did they ban them from operating in the state of Alabama? See, we have to study this history. I understand the origins of the NAACP and Joe Spingarn and things like this, but no, the NAACP was a threat to white supremacy in the South. This is why they banned them in Alabama. Now, Charles G. Gomillion appreciated the irony. He said, quote, "If we stay away from their churches, schools, and playgrounds, we are wise and understanding Negroes. But if we stay away from their stores, we are criminals. If they did not want our vote, why should they have our money?" He laid it out right there. He said, if we stay away from their churches, schools, and playgrounds, we are wise and understanding Negroes. But if we stay away from their stores, we are criminals, because they were trying to criminalize the protesters. He said, if they did not want our vote, why should they have our money? Now, despite the injunction, the boycott continued. Keep in mind, this economic boycott is going to last for 4 years. It's going to last for 4 years. See, a lot of us, we know about the Montgomery bus boycott, December 5th, 1955 to December 20th, 1956, lasted 381 days, started out as a one-day boycott the Monday morning, December 5th, 1955. But most of us don't know about this Tuskegee, Alabama boycott that starts in 1957. Okay, starts in June of 1957. Now, despite the injunction, the boycott continued. By the end of 1957, over 100 white businesses were forced to close their doors, and many other businesses and dealerships were reporting drop-offs of 40, 50, or even 60% in sales. They redistributed the pain to these people. Okay. Now, in spite of the economic turmoil caused by the boycott, the Tuskegee City Council unanimously voted to deny a petition signed by over 700 African Americans, which requested that the city re-annex the territory removed from its city limits by Act number 140. Okay, so just as yesterday, as is today, Most of the social ills that we're dealing with are the negative side effects of bad public policies. And this is what they were fighting against here. And most of our people don't understand law, don't understand politics. Two main ways to understand politics. Number one, the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. The legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. Number two, the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. The writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Now, in addition to this, Senator Inglehart continues his self-proclaimed crusade to, quote, split Negro political power, by proposing a constitutional amendment which would enable the legislature to abolish Macon County. They were trying to abolish the county. Okay. Senator Inglehart continued his self-proclaimed crusade to, quote, split the Negro political power by proposing a constitutional amendment which would enable the state legislature of Alabama to abolish Macon County, which was 84% African American. Macon County was 84% African American. So there were 25,771 African Americans in Macon County compared to 4,677 whites. And this was in order to dilute the African American population amongst the surrounding predominantly white counties. So they understood law. White people understood law back then, and many of our people had a better understanding of politics and the negative impact of politics than many of our people do today. Now, December 17th, 1957, the amendment was approved by citizens in Alabamians. It was approved 58,824 to 40,710. Okay, this was a statewide vote. 58,824 voted yes, 40,710 voted no. With the New York Times reporting that, quote, advocates of the change said it was necessary to prevent Negro control of the county in view of federal civil rights legislation to use national authority to guarantee voting rights. Advocates of the change said it was necessary to prevent Negro control of the county government in view of federal civil rights legislation to use national authority to guarantee voting rights, end quote. While the Tuskegee Civic Association alleged that the, quote, proposal was a device to maintain an undemocratic system of social relationships, a system which cannot be justified morally or politically, a system that cannot be justified morally or politically. Now, as the months wore on, the Tuskegee Civic Association continued to hold weekly mass meetings of 1,000 to 2,000 people at various African-American churches in order, quote, to keep up the spirit of resistance. In order to keep up the spirit of resistance. Then in June of 1958, an Alabama judge struck down the injunction against the Tuskegee Civic Association, noting that Americans have a right to trade with whom they choose, and ruling that Attorney General John Patterson had failed to substantiate his charges of coercion and intimidation against the organization. Now, 2 months later, on August 4th, 1958, Charles G. Gomillion and 12 other disenfranchised African-American voters filed a federal lawsuit against Tuskegee Mayor Phil Lightfoot and the city council, contending that Act number 140, which is the State of Alabama Act number 140 violated African Americans voters' constitutional protections. And they're probably referencing 15th Amendment of 1870, 15th Amendment. Now, by the end of 1959, participation in the economic boycott had dropped noticeably. But on February 27th, 1960, 400 students at the Tuskegee Institute reinvigorated the campaign with a peaceful march in downtown Tuskegee, Alabama, followed by a meeting 2 nights later, deciding to tighten the economic boycott to make it, quote, 100% effective. 100% effective. Then on November 14th, 1940, after several lower courts ruled that issues regarding gerrymandering did not fall within the judiciary's purview, the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously ruled that Gomillion versus Lightfoot, this case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, if the vote didn't matter, why did white people take this case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court? If it didn't matter, it's not free to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. You have to go through the appellate courts. Those are legal fees. That costs money. On November 14th, 1960, after several lower courts ruled that issues regarding gerrymandering did not fall within the judiciary's purview, the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously ruled that Gomillion versus Lightfoot was entitled to a full trial to determine if the gerrymandering had the effect of disenfranchising African-American voters. 8 Supreme Court justices found that such an effect violated the 15th Amendment, Section 1 of the 15th Amendment. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Race, color, or any previous condition of servitude. And 1 voting in concurrence found it violated the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, the 14th Amendment of 1868, which is based upon the Civil Rights Act of 1866. Now, also in 1957, you're going to have the Civil Rights Act of 1957 that's going to be passed also. The Civil Rights Act of 1957. And the Civil Rights Act of 1957 was the first federal civil rights legislation to be passed since 1875. And it authorized the federal government to take legal measures to prevent a citizen from being denied voting rights. This was the Civil Rights Act of 1957, not 1964, 1957. Now, on February 17th, 1961, federal judge Frank M. Johnson ruled that State of Alabama Act number 140 did have the effect of disenfranchising African-American voters and was thus unconstitutional, and issued an order prohibiting officials from enforcing the act. So Act number 140 was struck down after 4 years. Several weeks later, federal judge Frank Johnson delivered another sweeping victory for Macon County African Americans by ruling that the Board of Registrars was actively and deliberately obstructing African American voter registration and ordered an overhaul of the registrar's operating procedures. With these victories, the 4-year economic boycott on Tuskegee white merchants came to an end. So this was a huge victory for them. And they redistributed the pain with economic withdrawal strategies. This is so we talk about the Montgomery bus boycott that lasted 381 days. And that's good to study that. And I've studied that. But we need to study this one here. This lasted 4 years. They were in it to win it and won it. This is the economic boycott of Tuskegee, Alabama, 1957 economic boycott of Tuskegee, Alabama, that goes all the way to February of 1961. And it was, you had the landmark case of Gomillion versus Lightfoot. Okay. All right. So you can read more about this. I know blackden.com has an article about this. At blackden.com, they have an article, June 17th, 1957, the Tuskegee boycott began. Blackden.com. Also, Global Nonviolent Action Database. There are a number of articles that deal with this. New York Times has articles going back years. There are a lot of articles from 1957, 58, things like this regarding this case. And I looked at some of the original articles also. But Global Nonviolent Database, Global Nonviolent Action Database has an article, Black Citizens Boycott White Merchants for U.S. Voting Rights, Tuskegee, Alabama, 1957. We'll post it because I don't think it's going to let me post the link. I don't know, but we'll post this right here. And we posted an article about this yesterday and today on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network as well. So what you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Okay. So this is why understanding our history is so important. Your history and culture gives you your values, your interests, and your principles, your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. They influence your economic empowerment as well as your political empowerment. They influence your economic empowerment as well as your political empowerment. Okay. Your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. All right. So how's everybody doing? If you have any questions, go ahead and post them here. I know we have people watching on YouTube. So go ahead and post your questions if you have any questions here. I'm going to do a quick overview of our online class, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. I'm going to do a quick overview of that. Now, this is a 12-hour, 6-week online course that I teach. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. Okay. And we should be able to do screen share. Let me see here. Okay. All right. So let me see how this is coming in on YouTube. Okay. So you can see the screen share on YouTube. So how's everybody doing watching us on YouTube? Okay. So you can register for this online course. We'll post the link here. You can register here. As soon as you register, you can watch the class from last week, and it's going to enroll you in our new section. So you'll be able to join us for the last session of this course is wrapping up, and then it's going to enroll you into the new session that's going to start next Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, so you'll be able to get like 7 or 8 sessions instead of 6. Okay. And the full course is only $40. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. Okay. So we deal with, so when we deal with the transatlantic slave trade, number one, we have to understand we've been here at least 51,700 years. I deal with information also coming from Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. This is a landmark book if you haven't read it. His book deals with an African presence in this country that dates back at least 51,700 years. His book has 713 footnotes. And he deals with also the discovery made by Dr. Albert Goodyear in 2004 in Allendale County, South Carolina. And Dr. David Imhotep is a friend of mine. He's not my brother or my father, but he's a friend of mine. I've interviewed him a number of times. You see some of the interviews I've done with him here on our YouTube channel and on Facebook also. Okay. And you can listen to the audio podcast of our radio show at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have about 750 archive episodes of our show. But here's what they found in Allendale County, South Carolina, 2004. They found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeleton structures, and tools. Okay. Overwhelming evidence of an African presence that dates back at least 51,700 years ago. This is an article from ScienceDaily.com, article from ScienceDaily.com, November 18th, 2004. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. Okay. And they talk about how radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains where artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. Humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. Okay. Now, a lot of people don't know about this discovery, but archaeological discoveries take place all the time. And these are some of the things we deal with in the online course. So when we deal with the transatlantic slave trade, we have to deal with it chronologically. We can't deal with it as an episode in history. A lot of people try to deal with it episodically. Okay. And we have to understand that the transatlantic slave trade is a culmination of a sequence of historical events that take place and lead up to a larger event happening. It's the culmination of a sequence of historical events that take place and lead up to a larger event happening. So we deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors that set up Columbus to set sail on his 4 voyages. When he set sail August 3rd, 1492 on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. We deal with ancient Kemet as well. We talk about that some also. And when the Moors go in, they are taking in teachings. They're taking in teachings into Europe when they go in 711 AD. They're taking teachings into Europe that are going to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. Okay. They're going to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. And this is why you have to understand the chronology of history. And a lot of our people don't understand this. Okay. A lot of our people, unfortunately, don't understand this. All right. So now let me see. I'm trying to do something here. Okay. There was an error. Okay. Wouldn't let me broadcast on Facebook Live at the same time. Okay. So, and then to understand the transatlantic slave trade, we have to understand Columbus and his 4 voyages also, because Columbus helps to lay the foundation for slavery, racism, capitalism, the exploitation of indigenous people, and opens up the so-called New World to other European powers coming in and exploiting the so-called New World. At least 70% of the people that Columbus encounters on his 4 voyages are African people. At least 70% of the people Columbus encounters on his 4 voyages are African people. Okay. Okay. I want to make sure. Okay. How's everybody doing on YouTube? All right. How's everybody doing on YouTube? And even when you study Captain John Smith, 1607, Jamestown, Virginia, Captain John Smith talks about being captured by a group of Black Indians. Captain John Smith talks about being captured by a group of Black Indians. So a lot of people don't know that African people were in this land we call the United States of America even before Native Americans came here. This was our land stolen from us. And Native Americans are the offspring of the intermixing of Africans who come here at least 51,700 years ago, and Asians who come here around 3000 BC. And they're going to intermix, and their offspring are who we call Native Americans. Okay. So we deal with the role that Christopher Columbus played in the transatlantic slave trade. We deal with some of the events leading up to the transatlantic slave trade starting, like the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, what they introduced into Europe. And then also the Moors losing control, especially in Spain, the last stronghold, Grenada. They lose January 2nd, 1492. We deal with when did Africans first come to the U.S. as enslaved African people, because even if we deal with August 20th, 1619, and this is one of the problems I have with the slave-themed movies and the slave-themed TV shows like Underground, even if we deal with August 20th, 1619, African people were enslaved in the territory called South Carolina by the Spanish almost 100 years before that. But that's not talked about. That's not talked about. We deal with did Africans sell themselves into slavery as well, and deal with that complex history, because that is a complex history. And a lot of people like Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. take exceptions to the rule and try to extrapolate it over the whole of Africa and over the whole of the transatlantic slave trade, which is totally inaccurate. We deal with a real life example of the suppression of the knowledge when you deal with the Druids. You deal with the Druids who are dealing with a watered down teaching, watered down version of teachings coming out of ancient Kemet. And you're dealing with the Druids fighting against the Eastern Orthodox Church, and Pope Celestine I sending in a British slave in 432 AD named Patrick, who's going to be later canonized as a saint. His feast day is March 17th. And he's going to kill thousands of people in the name of the Christian church and Christianize the Irish and set up churches, baptize people, things like this. But he was a mass murderer for the Christian church. But he's fighting against the Druids who were dealing with the gnosis, okay? Because in Old Irish, Druid means he who knows, and they were dealing with the gnosis, which means the true knowledge. And the teachings they were dealing with were in direct contradiction to teachings coming out of Christianity. Okay, so to conquer the Irish, have power over them, the Druids had to go. So this is we deal with historical examples like this. We deal with a lot of archaeological finds, like the lost city of Egypt, Tanis Heracleon, which was that information was revealed in 2013. This was a lost city that's been lost for about 1,200 years. It's estimated that it was built around 8th century BC, and it sunk into Egypt's Bay of Abu Qir. It just is sunk into the sea. Okay, and this discovery, when it was revealed, 150 feet beneath the surface of Egypt's Bay of Abu Qir, they found 64 ships, 16-foot tall statues, 700 anchors, countless gold coins, and smaller artifacts. They found 16-foot tall statues of Set and other people. These are some of the findings. This is at the bottom of the sea that they found. 16-foot tall statues. It appears to be a Nasubiti or pharaoh. They found statues of Set, who the Greeks called Isis. This is the legs from a statue that they found also. All this found at the bottom of the sea. This is from the top of a statue, from the top of the head of a statue of Set. You see the horns of Hathor or Het Heru and the sun disk of Ra. So this is the type of, we deal with these archaeological findings, okay? And let me fast forward through some of this here. So we deal with the Moors, and we deal with the Egypt of the West and how the U.S. is the Egypt of the West. And when we look at the Washington Monument, that's an ancient African symbol called a Tekken, coming out of the story of Harsar, Set, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. And we deal with, you have to deal with Freemasonry to understand the founding of the U.S., to understand the layout of Washington, D.C., because the layout of Washington, D.C., we know Benjamin Banneker was a surveyor who did the layout of Washington, D.C. But you have to also understand how Freemasonry is based upon ancient principles coming out of ancient Kemet and the mystery systems. And we're going to see those symbols incorporated into Freemasonry, because these are teachings that were taken into Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, who George G.M. James in Stolen Legacy said were the custodians of the ancient Egyptian mystery system. Okay, and the Greeks, the ancient Kemetic people, the Kemet too, they called this structure an obelisk. I'm sorry, they call it a tekken. The Greeks call it an obelisk. They call it a tekken. And there were about 1,200 tekkenu all throughout ancient Kemet. Today, there are only about 12 of them. They're going to be taken to different cities and countries around the world: Istanbul, Turkey, Vatican City, taken to Rome, Italy, taken into France, things like this. Okay. So when you see this structure, know that that's referencing African history and culture. And 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons also. Here we have a famous statue of Heru with the falcon's head, the son, Asar, the father, and Auset, the mother. We have a copy of Auset, who the Greeks call Isis, in the TV show The Secrets of Isis, okay, which comes from DC Comic, which was a adaptation of the superhero created by DC Comics of Isis. This is still in African history and culture. So in the 1970s, I used to watch this show on Saturday mornings, the Shazam and Isis Hour, but I didn't know that this a white woman, Isis, they told us her name was Isis. I didn't know she was a copy of Auset, okay, who was in the mythology, the first queen of Kemet, okay? And you see Auset here with the baby Heru, who was born on December 25th of a virgin birth. Now, what I say may go outside the circumference of your awareness. Just because you never heard it before does not mean it's not true. It just means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. So this is the type of information we deal with in our online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with history chronologically as much as possible. We have to deal with a sequence of historical events that lead up to the transatlantic slave trade happening. So we deal with thousands of years of history in this class. And then from Auset, okay, we get the Black Madonna and Child. And then from the Black Madonna and Child, we get Mary and Jesus. It's important to understand also the ecumenical councils that take place from 325 AD with the First Council of Nicaea going up to 1870. And you have to understand, like the Council of Ephesus of 431, because that's even more important than the First Council of Nicaea, because the Council of Ephesus is when you're going to have the Theotokos created, the Mother of God, which is the Virgin Mary. And you have a change from the First Holy Trinity of Asar, Auset, and Heru to Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. You have Joseph's put in, but you have the Holy Spirit, all this put in. Then you that's 431. You also have the Council of Chalcedon of 451 AD as well, another important ecumenical council. Okay, I encourage people to read the book, The Historical Origin of Christianity by Dr. Walter Williams, The Historical Origin of Christianity by Dr. Walter Williams. I know Dr. Walter Williams. He's one of my teachers also. I've interviewed him a number of times. If you go to our website, you can read if you go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, just click on listen to podcasts of Michael Imhotep. You can listen to interviews I've done with him. We just posted a link here. Once again, you can register for our online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, so this is a 12-week online course. We usually do it on Fridays. We're going to do a session. Trying to see if we'll either do a session tonight about 9 o'clock. Because of I was trying to broadcast on Facebook Live, all this stuff is thrown off. It's throwing off my schedule. So if we don't do it tonight, we'll do it on Sunday in the afternoon, probably about 3 to 5. Dr. Francis, but all the sessions are recorded, so you can go back and watch it over and over again. And this will also enroll you in our new section coming up this Friday as well. So you'll be enrolled in our new section also. So you'll be able to watch the very next class that we do. and you'll be enrolled in the new section that starts up June 23rd. But all the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. You'll also be able to watch the class we did last Friday also. So Dr. Francis Cress Wilson and Neely Fuller, they taught us if you do not understand European white supremacy and racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you think that you understand will totally confuse you. If you do not understand European white supremacy and racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you think that you understand will totally confuse you. And this is one of my teachers, Dr. Lynn. Professor James Small teach to talk about the pyramid principle. And the pyramid principle, the foundation of the pyramid is African history and culture, which gives you your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. And they influence the two sides of the pyramid, economic empowerment and as well as political empowerment. So it doesn't matter how much money we have. If that foundation is not in place, we won't know what to do with the money. So we have to take our minds back, and that foundation is African history and culture. So we deal with the problem with slave movies. We talk some about the TV show Underground as well. I've done some videos dealing with that are on YouTube. Stephen Biko, one of our great South African freedom fighters, said the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Okay, so we also deal with like I said, archaeological discoveries as well that are causing experts to have to rethink everything. When these archaeological discoveries happen, like the one we talked about last Friday, you had a 300,000 skeletons of Homo sapiens that date back between 300,000 and 350,000 years old, found in Morocco. Okay, this came out earlier. This came out in May. Okay, this discovery 2017, totally shocking the archaeological world, totally flipping the archaeological world upside down, because the oldest previous remains of Homo sapiens dated back 195,000 years ago. Okay, and here you have evidence dating back 300,000 to 350,000 years ago in Morocco. The oldest fossils were from Ethiopia, and many of our scholars, like Runoko Rashidi, Dr. David Imhotep, Dr. Charles Fentz, they've been saying for years that Homo sapiens are not 100,000 years old, 200,000 years old, but at least 300,000 years old. Now we have archaeological evidence substantiating that as well. Okay. These are the national flags of Corsica and Sardinia. Corsica is a French island in the Mediterranean. Sardinia is an Italian island in the Mediterranean. And these are African Moors heads on their national flags. These are the national flags today. These are African Moors heads. And the Moors were in these areas. It took a monumental effort to defeat them, and they put them on their national flag. Originally, now we see the blindfold. We see the bandana. Originally, this bandana was a blindfold. Originally, the bandana was a blindfold to signify that they were prisoners, they had been captured. But to be more politically correct, because of tourism, things like this, they turned the blindfold into a bandana. But these are African Moors heads. These were African people. So you see the history of the African Moors all throughout Europe, France, Italy, Corsica, Sardinia, in the Mediterranean, Austria, Germany, England, Ireland, Spain, Portugal, Holland. You'll see it all throughout. You'll see them all throughout Europe. You'll see them in their literature, in their art, in their history, in their language, also in their bloodline, because the Moors are going to intermix with the European population also. Okay. So we deal with who the Moors were. One of the things I show also, we deal with Columbus, because Columbus is very important, and his 4 voyages is very important to understand the transatlantic slave trade. I deal with where Columbus went on his 4 voyages, because contrary to popular belief, Columbus never came to the land that we call the United States of America. He's in Haiti, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Cuba, Honduras, Panama. When you study his 4 voyages, he never comes to the land that we call the United States of America. The closest he comes is Cuba, which is 90 miles away. So we have to stop lying to our children, telling them that Columbus discovered America, because that's just historically inaccurate. Columbus never came to this land that we call the United States of America. All right. We also deal with the impact that insurance companies had on the transatlantic slave trade, because not only did they take out insurance policies on slave ships and on the enslaved African cargo on those ships, but also you're going to have over 40 insurance companies in the U.S. that take out insurance policies on slaves on the plantations as well, because there was a practice of insuring slaves on the plantation, especially those who did a very dangerous work, working in sawmills, working in coal mines, things like this, so that the slave owners could cash in the policy when they died and get 3/4 of the investment that they had in that slave back. This was a policy also. A lot of your early insurance companies got their start, or it was at least part of their business, insuring slaves on the plantation also. This is a little known piece of history. So Dr. David Imhotep and the first Americans were Africans documented evidence. He talks about how 70% of the people Columbus encounters on his 4 voyages in the islands were still African people. And then also Bartolome de las Casas, who was also central to the transatlantic slave trade. He was a bishop who goes on voyages, some of the voyages with Columbus, and he keeps a diary. It's going to be made into 2 books. One of them was Tears of the Indians or something like that. I read 2 of his books when I was in college. But he estimates that Columbus was responsible for the murder of 12 million to 25 million indigenous people. He estimates that Columbus was responsible for the murder of 12 million to 25 million indigenous people. So we deal with the origins of racism and the concepts of race. We deal with Right Reverend Bishop Bartolome de las Casas. I mean, not de las Casas. We deal with Dr. Carl von Linnaeus and Dr. Johann Friedrich Blumenbach, because they're critical to understanding the concept of race and the division of humanity into races. And we deal with understanding racism as a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, coming out of the system of white supremacy. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, coming out of the system of white supremacy for the purpose of preserving genetic white survival on the planet that's less than 10% European. We deal with historical figures like Hannibal Barca in the Battle of Cannae in 216 BC, fighting against the Romans, and how Hannibal, because of the rise of white supremacy, how Hannibal has been portrayed as a European oftentimes. Prior to the rise of white supremacy, he was portrayed as an African. But when you have a rise in white supremacy, a rise in the white phenotype, a rise in white power, a white power structure in the coming out of the late 1400s, going into the 16th century, 17th century, you're going to have them co-opting these African images and reinterpreting them as being European. Okay, and Hannibal is one of those images that we see that happen too, as well as the Virgin Mary, as well as going from the Black Madonna child to the white Virgin Mary also. Okay, all right. So we deal with thousands of years of history in this class. We do what was the transatlantic slave trade. We break down the Middle Passage also. Do with insurance companies, slave rebellions. A lot of information we cover in this company in this online course. We deal with the origins of the term America and Africa as well, because even the term America has an African origin going back to the Sierra Amérique and the Los Amarisques, who are a group of Black African people in Nicaragua, the Los Amarisques. So we deal with the links to ancient Kemet and early Christianity. Also deal with the fake Willie Lynch speech of 1712. The fake Willie Lynch speech of 1712. Willie Lynch never historically existed. Unfortunately, many of our people don't know this. Willie Lynch never historically existed. So we need to, there are words in the Willie Lynch speech that didn't even exist in the early 18th century. So we need to stop. We need to stop telling that lie as well. Okay, we need to stop telling that lie. Willie Lynch never historically existed. Sorry to hurt your feelings. The Willie Lynch syndrome does not exist. A slave syndrome exists, but the Willie Lynch syndrome does not exist because Willie Lynch never historically existed. Okay. All right. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, or right here, we'll post the link again as soon as you. Now this course is only $40. Registers you for 12-week, it's a 6-week, 12-hour online course. All the sessions are recorded. We normally do it live, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, okay, on Fridays. If you miss any of these sessions, go back and watch them over and over again. As soon as you register, you'll be able to watch last week's class. We have some bonus content for you also to watch. We're going to do online course. I was trying to do it tonight, but we had some technical difficulties. So we'll do it tomorrow, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday, June 18th. You can tune in live, and we do a PowerPoint presentation like you saw. We have video incorporated. So Boards in the Hood said Manu and Pim broke that down on one of your old shows. Yeah, and I reference some work from Manu and Pim when I talk about Willie Lynch. Willie Lynch never historically existed. Manu and Pim, I've interviewed Manu and Pim a few years ago. We talked about that, put that video on YouTube, man. We got it. He has a series of articles called Death to the Willie Lynch Speech, Death to the Willie Lynch Speech also. And you can go to his website, manuandpim.com, manuandpim.com. He has a series of articles, Death to the Willie Lynch Speech, okay? So if you all have any questions, you could post your questions before we get out of here. We have 11, we got like 10 minutes left in this broadcast because I'm broadcasting through Crowdcast, which allows me to broadcast on YouTube at the same time, and Facebook. There was a glitch with Facebook, so I couldn't broadcast on Facebook, but we can broadcast up to 2 hours. So we have 10 minutes left. So if you have any questions, go ahead and broadcast. How'd you all like this information? Did you all learn anything? Share this broadcast also, please share this broadcast on your social media platforms. If you have any questions, I can take some of your questions also. You can register for this online course. The information is going to blow you away. Some of the books that we use in the course, you don't have to buy any of these books, okay? But I use them for reference. I reference a lot of articles. We have a ton of information here. But this is one of the books I referenced, Golden Age of the Moor, Golden Age of the Moor, edited by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. And I definitely referenced the essay by Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay, around page 187, Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay. This is one of the books that I use. Also, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence by Dr. David Imhotep. The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence by Dr. David Imhotep as well. You don't have to buy any of these books to be able to follow along in the class, but it's good for reference and good for your own personal library and the library for your family, because we have to have education centers. Every African-American household has to have an education center. We have entertainment centers. We have the Wii's and the PlayStations and the flat screen TVs and the Blu-ray DVD players, surround sound systems, but we have to have education centers where we have the books, DVD lectures, documentaries, a globe, an atlas, an almanac, dictionaries, encyclopedias, whether they're online or on physical encyclopedias. We have to have the education center also, the children's books, the history books, the science books, math, we have to have education centers in every African-American household also. We use Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy. Also, we use numerous articles as well. Also, Classical Africa by Dr. Malefi Kete Asante, Classical Africa by Dr. Malefi Kete Asante. Now Valley Contributions to Civilization by Tony Browder as well. Those are just a few of the books that we use in the course for reference. Okay, you don't have to have read the books to understand them. You don't have to read the books to understand what we're talking about, but we use it for reference and to document what we're talking about as well. Okay, All of my lectures are available at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also. We talk about some studies that deal with education also. Malcolm X taught us that education is the passport, is our passport to our future. For tomorrow belongs to those that prepare for it today. Education is our passport to the future. For tomorrow belongs to those that prepare for it today. And I'll be in Atlanta third weekend in July for the Liberated Minds Black Homeschooling Education Expo. This is Queen Thais. She is the co-founder of the expo. I'm there each year. I'm one of the presenters, and I'm a vendor there also. I'm one of the workshop presenters. And Queen Thais talks about how the education that we give our children should teach them how to meet the needs and solve the problems of their community. And this is something I talk about as well. The education that we give our children should teach them how to meet the African-centered education that we give our children should teach them how to meet the needs and solve the problems of their community. And also the African-centered education that we give our children should give them the individualized cultivation of their divine purpose in life, the individualized cultivation of their divine purpose in life. Go to liberatedmindsexpo.com. liberatedmindsexpo.com. You can get more information about the Liberated Minds Expo, about the Black Homeschooling Conference that takes place each year. The Black Homeschooling Conference that takes place each year. So we have DVD lectures, all my lectures. We have documentaries at our website. We have the Hidden Colors documentaries. You have a bundle pack, all 4 installments of Hidden Colors also. Plus you get some of my documentaries and one installment of Afro Man and Protectors of the Book of Knowledge. We have that for one low price. It's about $100 here, something like that. Check that out at our website also. The Hidden Colors Family Bundle Pack. We have the Afro Man and Protectors of the Book of Knowledge animated series for children also from Kofi Johnson. He's the animator. So we help market these and distribute them, help promote them also. So these are African-American superheroes. It's an animated series. They're very entertaining for our children, but also educational because they help to teach our children about their history and build positive self-esteem. Afro Man and the Protectors of the Book of Knowledge. And these African-American superheroes, they have male and female superheroes in this animated series also. Okay, Afro Man and Protectors of the Book of Knowledge. And children watch them over and over again. As well. Check out this article from AtlantaBlackStar.com. Kwanzaa event attracts hundreds to support Black-owned businesses. My degrees in business administration. I've taught entrepreneurship for years. I've studied African history, African-American history and culture, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship for 25 years, as well as media for 25 years. I've been doing radio for 7 years. And this is a great article here from AtlantaBlackStar.com. I deal with this in some of my presentations. The Kwanzaa event attracts hundreds to support Black-owned businesses. This is from AtlantaBlackStar.com, December 27, 2016. And it talks about Carrie Cadet, African-American female comedian, who created a Kwanzaa crawl. She created the Kwanzaa crawl December 26, 2016. And you had, they organized about 1,600 African-Americans in 3 weeks, and they targeted 17 African-American owned businesses and pumped thousands of dollars into these African-American owned businesses. Okay. This is something real. This is not theory. This is something that actually happened. Okay. So this is something that this is a strategy that we could use to redirect dollars to African-American owned businesses. Once again, Dr. King in his last speech, April 3rd, 1968, I've been to the mountaintop. He said that we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. He talked about redistributing the pain of those inflicting pain upon us. He talked about we have to strengthen Black institutions. And he talked about supporting the African-American owned banks, supporting the African-American owned insurance companies, life insurance companies, supporting our own businesses, et cetera. He said this in the speech. This is not the first time he talked about that. It's not like he's just started talking about economic empowerment the day before he was assassinated. If you think that, you did not read his books. He wrote 5 books. Please, people, study Dr. King. Dr. King was a very revolutionary leader. And towards the end of both of their lives, Dr. King and Malcolm X, they were both assassinated at 39 years old. Medgar Evers was assassinated he was about 38 years old when he was assassinated. But toward the end of both of their lives, their ideologies were converging. Dr. King and Malcolm X. Toward the end of both of their lives, their ideologies were converging. If you read the book Malcolm Martin in America, A Dream or a Nightmare, Malcolm Martin in America, A Dream or a Nightmare, by James H. Cone, he deals with this in his book. Martin and Malcolm in America, A Dream or a Nightmare. He deals with this in his book, how toward the end of both of their lives, their ideologies were converging. Okay. So no, we're gonna wrap it up here. Yeah, Dr. King, shortly before he was assassinated, he talked about the Poor People's March. You had the campaign for the Poor People's March, and he laid out how historically the U.S. government has supported immigrants coming to this country and supported poor whites with various policies. Homestead Act of 1862, which gave away millions of millions of acres of land to between 400,000 to 600,000. Mainly white families. You have a Southern Homestead Act of 1866, right after the Civil War ends. You have New Deal. A lot of those policies are going to greatly benefit whites, save white homes. Homeowners loan corporations going to be created. You have also funding to save white farms, but not save African-American farms. So we lost thousands of our farms. In 1930, we owned 900,000 farms. By 1939, it dropped down to 682,000 because white farm owners could get government assistance to pay their mortgages and save their farms, but we couldn't get that government assistance for the most part. So we lose hundreds of thousands of acres of land. Okay, actually millions of acres of land because of this. And once again, racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Okay, so I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network. Visit our website, africanhistorynetwork.com, africanhistorynetwork.com. Register for our online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And remember, right now is correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace.